This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hey everyone, Nolan here. I'm the co-founder of NEGOTIATEx. With me today is my good friend, Aram Denesian. Aram is also the co-founder of NEGOTIATEx. But more importantly, we have Gary Ortiz from Sonos. Aram, I'll kick it over to you to introduce Gary.
Thanks, Nolan. So folks, we're blessed to be joined today by Mr. Gary Ortiz, Global Sourcing Manager at Sonos, where he develops and manages supplier relationships, executes sourcing strategies, and balances business needs with building strong alignments with various engineering teams. Prior to joining Sonos, he was the director of engineering for Hayward Industries pool products division, which, by the way, I believe I have both a pump and a heater from Hayward. There he served as the principal expert on engineering, technical, and service matters, business development needs, supporting customers, and day-to-day plant operations. He led a cross-functional team of 25 people with an expense budget in excess of $19 million. By the way, those Hayward products continue to work very well. Good deal. Good. Thanks, Gary. Gary has an MBA from Wake Forest University, a Bachelor of Science in Electronic Engineering Technology. And I'll add that he has generously given of his time in many ways over the years, from Little League boards to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And I would also add that he's mentored a group of my MBA students a couple of years ago on a negotiation consulting project. They truly loved learning from you, Gary. And it's really exciting for me to say thank you and welcome to our program today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's a great pleasure. I look forward to our discussion.
So, Gary, for our listeners who aren't familiar with Sonos, can you tell them a little bit about what your company does?
Sonos is a high-end audio company. What's special about Sonos is all of our speakers are wireless. So you have seamless wireless speakers throughout your home. You can enjoy room-to-room listening seamlessly. They are powered, so you get high fidelity sound out of these amazing home theater and portable speakers now. So we've recently got into some portable speakers you can take to the beach, put on your boat, waterproof, weatherproof, all that. So really, really great company.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Now, I just kind of wanted to kick off the conversation here by talking a little bit about how you got into negotiation, both personally and professionally. And have there been any key milestones in your development as a negotiator?
Yes. I'll start off, I think, where I sit today. You look back, and I will tell you that I think we all start negotiating as children. If you think about it, children are some of the best negotiators in the world. Who wants to, when you're tired at the end of the day, they know every button to push, so, I was that kid, right? I advance a little forward. I was also that kid who was negotiating various punishments for my brother and I. It was like, and so my parents confused me with an attorney. Said he doesn't need an attorney. I said, no, hold on. So that was me. I was the older brother, and we were thick as thieves at times. So that was my thing. So, but I will say professionally, I think just over the years, little by little, I found that I enjoyed it. I think, again, starting personally, it was really carbide. A lot of people hate that. I love it, but meeting people, there's one person in particular that I would credit for my professional development or startup, I should say. John Barbieri. He was a salesman with Thermophil, Asahi Thermophil, and he was just an amazing guy, and he had a lot of patience. And, he and I developed an amazing relationship. And he was the one who taught me, relationship is key. Honesty, integrity, trust, and building that was so important. And it was amazing how well he did it. And I just, we worked together for many years. He made me understand that, our relationship was always above board, and it was always beneficial to his organization and mine. And he taught me so much and inspired me to learn so much more, to the point where his company brought us up and at his retirement day, we surprised him, a couple of us, that it was a really, he is still a great guy. I talk to him every once in a while. He's great. He's retired, but he's the one who's given me the most that kind of kickstart early in my life.
That's a great tribute, but also got a great point, right? I think it's get lost sometimes, the importance of relationship in these sorts of negotiations. So you kind of, I guess, maybe building even off that relationship piece in your current role as a global sourcing manager there at Sonos. How is it that you're using or utilizing negotiation skills daily, dealing with both internal and external stakeholders?
Yeah. So, part of our job as we try to find the strategic relationships, right? We're dealing a lot with very technical teams. And being an engineer myself, I can appreciate that, when you have something and you have trust in it, a widget, some sort of silicon part, they're rewarded for going quickly and efficiently, but making sure obviously their designs are very robust, so they get comfortable with products, companies, etc. One of the things that I find myself doing is negotiating with them, that trying to get them to change their mind a bit, or open their mind more than anything with regards to other products or services or value adds that some of our suppliers have. And it's sometimes difficult, but that is step one, right? Earning their trust, earning their confidence is really key. So you find yourself doing that. I think when I came to Sonos, one of the biggest challenges is we were just a sourcing, purchasing people, and we do everything but that, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that's some of the main stuff internally, and then externally, we're constant, and you can imagine, and I'm sure we'll get into that later, just the way in the 3.5 years that I've been here, how the pandemic has really affected our negotiating and what we've had to do. So we're constantly negotiating and working both internally and externally to balance those things. And it's I've learned a lot. I really have. It's amazing, and still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, we'll get more into that external, especially with the last couple of years of the pandemic. Just a moment. That was a little bit of a setup question, because I feel like so often people forget about the internal negotiations that have to occur. You started answering by talking about kind of the internal alignment and that you do. Is that, from where you sit, are those internal negotiations sometimes more difficult than the external? Or are they just different?
They can be more difficult, right? Because you have a group of people who kind of set or have a strong foundation. Now, I say I'm an engineer, but I am nowhere near the capabilities that some of these folks are. So you take that with a grain of respect. So you have to earn their respect. You have to be able to understand how to influence them, right? Something that I've had to do is there'll be pockets of things that you just can't, they're immovable. And I think one of the things negotiations have taught me is helping to increase your areas of influence. So if I can't, let me see if I can get some further support and work the angles that way. And so when it's not just coming from me and it's coming from other groups or other functions, it seems to help. And so it can be harder, especially for newer, when you're newer, it becomes, I think a lot of work, but it's what we all say, right? The respect and trust is earned. And, as long as you're bringing evidence-based positions, I think that's really key and critical.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, Gary. And so I just want to kind of dive into this just a little bit more, because a lot of the times, a lot of our clients have difficulty understanding how to really build that trust and those relationships. And that's obviously very key to negotiations. So I was hoping to get a little bit more specific here on how, you're meeting a new supplier, a new distributor, anything like that. How do you really work to build that trust? Are Are you able to do it in just one meeting? How exactly, what are some key takeaways that we can give to our audience on how to be successful in building those relationships?
Transparency, honesty. Or if you had two words that I would give you, I would say that. One of the biggest successes, biggest successes to a trusting relationship is that transparency, that respect, and honesty. And it's business, so what I tell everybody is, I'm always going to be honest with you. You may not like what I have to tell you. Hey, you didn't win the business, or you didn't, we're cutting the program out, right? You're not going to get as much share, but you can always count on it being honest, right? And being truthful. And that's all I expect, back. And I think, a round or two of that, and they see, that your word is true, and a lot of great things come out of that. And so you can, in addition to you didn't win, or you didn't get a socket or something like that, why? Be very clear with them, and I think people appreciate that. And above all of it, treat everyone with respect. These are not transactional things. This is not a I win, you lose conversation ever. These are definitely more distributive type discussions and conversations where we're definitely, it's a give or take. Remember, I tell people, I'm always weary of the toes I step on or crush, because, I could be needing that person, here pretty soon. So yeah, those are some of the things that I definitely, really focus on in relationships.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful, because I think sometimes people feel that if you work on the relationship and you're transparent, somehow you're giving something up. We will often talk to people about there's actually tangible value to be gained when you can operate in an environment of trust and transparency and honesty.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's something you've experienced.
Absolutely. And to a point where some people will tell you something that they were told not to tell you. And my rule here is, look, I will never reveal a source. I will never reveal, but back to that internal piece. If I look at my boss and I say, look, it's not going to happen. Can't tell you why, but I'm going to tell you it's not going to happen. They know now not to ask, right? And they know it's not my opinion. I have something, that is worthy. It came up recently. There was a failed start of a front end process for some silicon, right? And there was a miss. Somebody forgot or didn't do their job to get it started. Well, that's a lengthy process. It doesn't start on time, right? It doesn't come through. Well, they didn't want to admit to their mistake at the higher level. Right. But our guy said it didn't happen. And you didn't hear from me, but it didn't happen. And of course, I will never say anything. And
right.
But what's so critical is when I'm sitting in front of the executive team and they're looking for me to give them the confidence that we are either going to get something or we're not going to get a part. Look, I can tell them with certainty we're not going to get it. Right. Yeah. And so we're not going to play this game and go back and forth. And we're going to keep our relationship above board. We're going to keep it on. But I don't have to tell them all the other details, how I found out or whatever. Yeah. And, then we move on, right? Because that's business. And otherwise, he's stringing me along. And it's just that slippery slope into terribleness. And that's not a relationship.
Yeah. And I think something that you said there was really important because, for our listeners, what Gary just talked about was managing internal stakeholders. And so being able to paint that picture to your bosses so that they have trust with you so that you can get that authority that you need to move forward in the negotiation. So thanks for bringing that up, Gary. I appreciate it.
Gary, a few moments ago, you alluded to just the challenges of the past several years, the pandemic, a lot of different stressors occurring right now on supply chain. What are some of the biggest changes, challenges, even opportunities with negotiations that you're a part of? Both, I guess, two-part question here. In terms of how they're conducted, maybe the process of the negotiation, and also kind of the what they're about, maybe more around substance and terms.
Yeah. How they're conducted, Zoom, email, chats, that kind of stuff. So it's taken a lot of that personal touch. We do a lot of communicating with our bodies, and you can always tell by posture, by certain, how painful some of these things are or are not. But at the same time, I think, and I'm going to jump to the second part of the question here, is we're negotiating for different things right now. Where before, your number one priority was, dollar per widget, or, cost, and immediate cost. But now we're really focusing on linearity of supply, or supply continuity is trumping the cost. And I think it's not that cost isn't part of the conversation. It's just cost is, hey, in time, we're going to get the cost out. So we're looking a year or 2 years out, right? At whatever comfort, and again, not holding, them to an absolute number, but getting ranges. And while again, I don't mean to come across or sound as if we're not being fiscally responsible. I mean, of course, cost is important.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I have heard it from various suppliers that our style of negotiating during this pandemic, where there were second order and third order events happening to the supply chain, our style was much more preferred. They no yelling and screaming, and just, I want every penny, because you know what? A good partner is going to come back to you with that when the time is right. But, right now I can lean in. Our products we have high demand. People love our product. And so therefore, hey, let's give me good supply, and we'll get to the cost again. We'll revisit that shortly.
Gary, something that's pretty important, something that Aaron and I definitely harp on, and has basically been a trend throughout, our military profession, and then as we transition to helping other clients in negotiations. And that is how important preparation is, how important preparing for negotiation is, and for you specifically, how important preparing your team for any of the probably 10 to 20 negotiations that probably happen in a week underneath you at different levels for different specific things. So kind of two-part question here is, how do you personally deal with negotiations? I imagine it's at a bigger level, or prepare for negotiations. And then how do you prepare your team, or, that relationship with you as the manager in the negotiations preparation process?
It's interesting. That is an area that we definitely are striving to improve. And I think what I learned, during my MBA and going through formal negotiation classes, is that preparation is very critical. Preparation of who's in the room, the role that those people are playing, the style, the format, it all is critical, right? And what reminded me of this was when I was mentoring one of our ROM's classes, and they brought me back to the BATNAs and the formalized process, and it's really a great process. So I tell you this because in the professional space, oftentimes, in this segment, I think people think they're the greatest negotiators. I included in that. But we're always better when we throw these ideas at each other before the negotiation, angling, or finding the different ideas. And I will tell you, it's an area that we're improving on as a group. It's bouncing these things off each other before going in, ensuring that we give our leaders their roles in the negotiation. Because let's face it, we're in the trenches, we're there working. We understand the ins and outs of the various markets, the segments, the geopolitical risks, or things that we've been able to glean, our contacts, right? Because we've been working this with our sales channel. And then making sure that our leaders are prepared to ask certain questions, prepare for different. So we're getting better at it, but I will tell you, it's an area that I think most companies don't do. When I interview folks and I ask, people, what was your approach on this? And they're like, well, I just, I did my research, I did this, I did that, and they went into the negotiation. I said, well, did you dry run it with anybody? Did you try that? And no, everybody's so busy. But I will tell you, you might be busy, but it's worth that dry run. And so I will tell you, we're improving on that. And it's something that prior to my MBA and even after working with your team around, it's not something that was natural, but it really is beneficial. And it's an area that I think we're getting better at doing more of. I think the other challenge that we have sometimes is teams nowadays are all over the world. I mean, a lot of our team was in Asia. So think of cultural differences too. I mean, that's been another challenge, that you get into some of these larger negotiations and culturally, right, they just go at it differently. And in those cases, the distance and the pandemic of not being in the same room really had, some challenges. So, I think that was a long-winded answer, but it's definitely critical to prepare. It is absolutely critical to be prepared. And your teammates, are a great place to prepare.
I think that's pretty funny that you said that, Gary, because Aram has always said that, what we typically find is people generally prep from the movement of this meeting to the next. And so, in New York City, as you're going down your building to the next building, that may just be, a block and a half worth of prep time before you actually get to that next meeting. Or if you're lucky, maybe it's a long flight to Tokyo.
That's
so
right.
that's usually the amount of time that anyone devotes towards that negotiation prep.
Nolan stole my line. I was going to say the same thing.
Yes, finally.
And I was going to say, I'm so proud of my students. I got to have to go back to that group and say, hey, good on them. Also, Gary, I think that's, to what Nolan is saying, it's humble of you to say that, because I think all of us, if we're honest, we all could do more preparation. Obviously, you could prepare and never stop preparing. That's not going to be productive either. But what you're saying is, hey, that's a place where we all can get a little better. And it's really beneficial because there is a tendency for us to think, I've done this 1,000 times. I can walk in and just with me in the room, I'm good enough. And that's not always true, especially as you're talking about kind of these cross-cultural negotiations and how there's some, significant nuanced differences that we need to be aware of. So
For sure.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. All right. So I wanted to dig into interest. You've talked quite a bit about interest, how interests have shifted because of the pandemic a little bit, where priority of interest may be. Certainly the interest of relationship. We often hear from tech clients that their interest in negotiation range from a number of things. Being able to achieve different metrics around margins. You've talked about that, increasing market share, expanding into other product lines, different product or tool development, quality, meeting important specs, supplier customer responsiveness and satisfaction, flexibility from a supplier to adapt or respond quickly to different technology advances. Sometimes that requires, reconfigurations and redesigns with their setup. And then obviously, and you've talked about this, the importance of continual supply, managing risk exposure, cash flow, predictability, those things. What other interests are important to the negotiations you're part of? And then I think maybe more importantly, as you look at maybe those external negotiations with suppliers, what things are different or similar? Where is there alignment maybe between interests that you and your suppliers have?
Yeah, so I think one of the ones that you listed here is very important. So the flexibility to adapt and respond to new technology advances. So you could appreciate that taking a piece of silicon, a radio or a CPU, right, and putting it in your product, it is not as simple as, taking it out of a tray or pulling it off a reel and soldering it down on a board and plugging it in and it works. There's an amazing amount of, integration that has to occur. the development of software, drivers, firmware, right? Some of that has to come from your supply base. So the relationship that you're developing when you pick something like that, you're going to be locked in for a while. So one of the things that's really important is, what does their roadmap look like? What does their future product look like? And that's got two purposes. One, we like to stay sometimes on the bleeding edge of technology. Sometimes we're on the cutting edge of technology, right? So, and then most importantly, we want reuse out of that effort. So oftentimes,
Sure.
we put this effort into this CPU. We put this effort into this radio implementation. You have a deep relationship. All of a sudden, the Wi-Fi standard changes, or the Bluetooth standard changes, or some other standard changes. And all of us, we're techies, right? I want the latest and greatest. You can't come out with the next speaker and all of a sudden it'd be the old radio standard. So what does their journey look like? What are they keeping an eye on? When are they switching over? How much of the product that I'm in now and the software firmware that I'm doing now is portable to the next one? Because that's how you sell the engineers, right? The engineers are like, well, great, I can reuse this whole chunk of software in the new one, and I'm just talking about a couple drivers or a couple small pieces. Great, they get excited. So you're selling not only internally that the value that they're about to put in and the effort that they're about to do, and we're talking thousands and thousands of hours of people's time to get this thing up and running, right? Security, all these things that most of us don't think about. Right. They want that assurance that I could do this once and I get two I get two benefits from it, right?
Yeah.
So that's really important. And then for me, it's okay. Well, you start looking at the cost curve. You start looking at, all right, well, if this is coming out, oftentimes they're going to start to push you. And you start taking advantage of, okay, well, where's that inflection point, or where are those things? So that's on the business side. You start looking at some of those aspects. So I think it really it's two prongs, but equally as important, right? The tech team, the engineers, they want to know that what they're putting in is going to have a life, and how much of that life can be, continue to reuse. And then for us, where would we see, potential breaks or changes in cost that we can count on? And so I think those are our biggest area. Of course, you always do how risky is the supplier? Sure. Where is their foundry? Who are they going to be putting this technology with? I mean, those are things that I think we've put maybe additional. They've always been there, but I think we've put a higher level of scrutiny to them, or as we do a Pareto of what are we looking? We want to look at what is critical. That does come up now more often than it did before.
Hey everyone, Nolan here. I need to jump in and stop this great discussion. Join us next week as we wrap up this discussion with Gary on the NEGOTIATEx podcast. Thanks for listening. If you could please like and subscribe to the podcast, we greatly appreciate it. Leave any reviews, any feedback is greatly appreciated. Thanks. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.